So, yeah. No policy.
Page 128 on the electronic
I've
agenda.
gone right past it. There we go. Okay, item 6.5, adoption of Wairarapa Class 4 gambling and standalone TAB venues, policy statement, proposal and draft policy, which is a wide policy. Solitaire.
Thank you, Your Worship, the Mayor. I'm going to apologise to Councillor Laurence right now because this is another paper that has got a significant number of attachments and reading to happen in it. I will also just note to the councillors that this is why we have the Wairarapa Policy Working Group, which Councillor Cretney and Councillor Cherry-Campbell sit on, so that a lot of this very intensive reading has been nutted out, it's been thrashed out, and the recommendations are coming to council as what the working group determines to be the best solution for the Wairarapa. I would like to just touch on a couple of things. As you'll see in the rather voluminous report and papers, there is actually only 4 amendments to the existing policy, which has over the time worked incredibly well. And one of them was amending the policy so that the venues cannot relocate to the most deprived areas, and noting that the main centres are exempt. So what this is, the intent of this policy is what it is going to do is to prevent a gambling venue setting up outside of a town centre where it could cause significant social harm. We always had a relocation provision within the previous policy, where if there was emergency situations, they could relocate. I am pleased to say that that part of the policy will not affect Carterton District Council areas at all, because even though the town centre is exempt, the town centre in Carterton has the highest SO rating, which is around a 7 or an 8, and this only kicks in for the high ones. And all of our areas outside of the urban appear to be decile 1 to 6 at the latest one I was looking at. So that relocation into low decile or high decile areas doesn't apply here because we don't have that criteria. Then there was also the amendment policy to state about the no standalone TAB venues. So just in case anybody's wondering what they are, then it's purely like what you might see down, there's a couple in Courtney Place where it's actually a TAB, and that's its only function of what it does. It's not a TAB that's integrated within a pub environment. It's purely somebody coming and going, I want to open up a betting shop. And it's not really changing. It's more about maintaining the policy as it is and the consistent approach. And then the third amendment is really around clarifying the sinking lid policy, because there was just a little bit of ambiguity between the previous policy and where we've got to now, because we have the maximum number allowed in a district. But then if a business closes down and they're not operating the gaming machines for X amount of period, then they lose that ability to reinstall them. So it was just, there was a little bit of conflict in the previous document that has been tidied up. And Carterton, we're one of the districts that did lose some of our gaming machines. We lost 18. Yeah. And then there's just some updates to reflect legislation and readability of the document. So I'm happy to answer questions on this if required, and we also have the backup of Councillor Cretney and Councillor Cherry-Campbell, who have been all over this as part of their fantastic work on the policy working group.
Right. Would either of you like to speak to it? Policy.
I think you summed it up very well. I will say that in the meeting that we had when we reviewed this with our neighbouring councillors, that the decisions were unanimous on the recommendations that have been put up to all 3 councils.
Councillor Ayling.
Was there much discussion in those meetings with making tighter restrictions than this? Either of you or? Oh, if you're involved as well.
I think that was one of the options that is assessed in the report, which was adopt a more restrictive propose.
And that was seen as not viable, or?
It wasn't felt, correct me if I'm wrong, it wasn't felt to be necessary because the policy is actually working really, really well. This was just more about ensuring that it continues to work well. And then as Solitaire said, just there's some ambiguity in some of the wording of it. So, yeah, it wasn't deemed to be necessary.
Wasn't widespread support for that?
The only option after sinking lid is prohibited, is it
Well,
not?
You're actually not allowed, under the Act, you're not allowed to have a blanket ban.
Prohibition.
You can have a capped number, you can have a sinking lid, but you cannot prohibit.
It's political. So,
Yeah.
so we have prohibition by stealth through the sinking lid.
We do.
So when the club closed down its pokies, the Carterton club,
That was a long time
yeah,
ago.
no, it was, but they can't, now that it's rejuvenating and pumping up again, they can't get them back under this policy.
It's a period of 6 months, isn't it?
Is when they stop. There is actually a lot of businesses that themselves are choosing to get rid of their poker machines.
Marcus.
Look at Marquis, because actually they are recognising that there is some significant social harm. And I think it was quite interesting, the statistics that were in the reports. Only 18% of the profits actually came back to the Wairarapa.
Yeah.
That's not a lot.
I saw that. How does that happen when the legislation is so specific?
I couldn't answer that.
Well, someone should, because it's been a lot of money. Sarah has written a big report here. So how
I
come we
think it's
don't
the
know?
geographical areas and the applications that go in. So if we look at, Trust House that operates some of the gaming machines, they're a lot wider than just Wairarapa.
Yeah, no.
So these national body gaming machines, they might just have other projects that they deem a better use of the gaming money.
Profit's profit. The government legislation requires, is it 30%? It actually states it in the legislation.
People still have to apply for that funding and meet the criteria. That's part of the funding criteria.
Mm.
And there are entities in the Wairarapa who will not apply for gaming money as funding
Yeah.
as well. So it's not a blanket, this is why. I think there's a lot of contributing factors.
And because Trust House has pubs and bars outside of the Wairarapa,
So their money.
that opens up to other places.
His worship, we had discussion around hoping that the outlets that do have the pokie machines would be proactive in looking forward and recognising that even with the drop in the amount of pokie machines, the level of gambling has actually increased. You would hope that some of these outlets would actually choose to lower the amount of gambling machines they do have themselves. But the trouble is the dollar value they get for those machines as a lease is massive.
Mm.
And for some of those outlets to lose that would be very costly for them. So it's a difficult position.
Somewhere,
Yes.
here, and I can't find the page number, I should have written it down. There is a comparison between the amount of grant money that is allocated even between the three the councils in Wairarapa, and Carterton is trailing significantly.
Masterton got 81.9% of the grant funding.
That could also be, so speaking for somebody that does apply for grants for Life Education Trust.
Yeah.
Our registered office is Masterton, so it depends where the registered office is. So even though our activities for Life Ed is Wairarapa Tararua, and we apply for funding, it shows that the funding is going there, even though we may be applying for funding for here or for South Wairarapa. And that happens across the board for a lot of these organisations.
And it's the same for the Wings Over Wairarapa STEM program, and it's the same for,
Balloons.
and Balloons is registered in Masterton. Everyone in the Wairarapa is getting the benefit with the registrations in Masterton, and same for the hot rod.
They'll be up
Drag,
there,
drag,
drags.
trip. Yeah, Motorplex, yeah.
I just wonder if, in view of the amount of grant applications we just received for a fairly limited amount of funding, whether there's some role for council or for the gaming entities to make it a bit more obvious that there could be some money available to people.
It's there. I mean,
I think it's kind of, it is down to the entities, and I know that staff here at council, when people do come and ask for council funding, they've been amazing at sending them in the directions of going out and letting them know where other funding is available. It's just some of those organisations don't always meet the criteria because all the different gaming trusts have quite strict criteria, and there's certain things that they will fund and certain things they won't, and you've got to be this kind of organisation or that kind of organisation. So, for sort of some of the smaller ones that do apply to the councils, for example, it's beyond their realms of being able to access some of this funding.
yeah. Are there any other questions? I mean, again, this is a Wairarapa wide policy. I like it or not. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Cretney. Councillor Cherry-Campbell. I would just point out that when we were raising money to build this, rejected every time we applied. Not holding it against anybody, but just saying.
They haven't forgotten.
Haven't forgotten. Yeah. But I do recognise the value Trust House does in so many other areas, but there you go. Would councils just have to pick up the tab, won't we? So we've got some recommendations, and I gather there's some decisions that need to be made in there. So where are the recommendations starting?
Page 138.
28. Sorry.
38.
Looking at that. Okay. Let's go straight to, for no further questions, let's just go straight to recommendations. Someone to move that we receive the report, and I'll take the first two as one and two. Receive the report and note that the joint review of the standalone policy is underway. To abbreviate, abridged version. Someone to move, please. Councillor Ayling, seconded by Councillor Gallen. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion's carried. Agrees to the recommendations of the Wairarapa Policy Working Group to make amendments to the policy. And let's go through them to state that the Class 4 gaming venues cannot relocate to Wairarapa's region's most deprived area. Those, and as stated, as read, state that no new TAB standalone venues may be established in the Wairarapa. To clearly state that no new electronic game machines will be granted consent in any Class 4 venue. Amendment for clarification purposes. And D, to reflect legislative or other changes since the last review and improved flow of readability. Who's to move? Councillor Deputy Mayor and Councillor Newman. Seconded. All in favour?
Aye.
Motion's carried. Recommendation 4 notes that the consultation with the community is proposed to take place between 2nd October and 3rd November. Someone to move. Councillor Cherry-Campbell, Councillor Della seconding. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Adopts a statement of proposal and draft policy for consultation with the community using the as read. Someone to move. Councillor Cretney, Councillor Gallen, all in favour? What are the rest on delegates and notes? Delegates, let's take those both as one, shall we? Looking around, someone to move 6 and 7. Councillor Cretney, Councillor Della, all in favour? Against? Motion is carried. Thank you, Sylvia.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you,
Councillors.
working group. Thank you, working group. I'm going against every sin on my body. Free enterprise. Let's go. 7.6 Carterton Event Centre strategic plan.
15 of the electronic.
Welcome, we're gonna,
Yeah. It's a strategy. So this was something that was brought to the elected members in April. There was an original workshop done. We've gone through and we have looked at that. The staff have been working on it quite tightly, wanting to stick to the original concept and the idea of where the event centre came from, which that it was a community hub facility that was to be accessed by all of our community. The plan here is just around what the team can do to strengthen and enhance that, and bring this strategy and bring the event centre into, I guess, the future, leading the way with some of the sustainable goals that they've got in there. We have included the finances into this report. It was a bit of a damned if we do, damned if we don't. I wanted to keep the event centre strategy about the event centre strategy, but I know there's been numerous conversations about the finances. So it'd be really good to keep the conversation about the strategy and the finances quite separate, because the strategy is not the finances, but we can have that conversation around both. Yeah, I'll take it as read and happy to answer questions.
floor's open. Our Deputy Mayor.
Linda, what challenge what challenges you the most with the event centre?
That's a good question. One of the things that I know the team struggles with is the programming. So we don't have any budget to buy shows in. So we rely on people coming in off their own accord or doing joint ventures. Yeah, so I think if there was a capacity for us to buy shows in, we would be able to drum up more revenue for us.
Wouldn't that come to us like in a business case, so that we could see the potential benefits to offset the investment? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I would think that as a council, we'd be receptive to something like that made economic or made sense in a broader perspective.
Yep.
I mean, if it grows the business and we've got the capacity to meet that business, I wouldn't be afraid of looking at it.
Cool.
I think that would be a really good LTP conversation. The benefits are we drive attendance, we utilise the event centre, we can make sure that it offsets the overhead costs of the event centre. The balance will be that we are taking on the program risk of that event, and if we have, for example, a COVID-like lockdown and suddenly we have to cancel the show for whatever reason, that we carry that risk.
Well, it'd be insurance and it'd be like, I mean, as I say, if that's an opportunity that's unrealised, that you think, living in it every day, you think there's potential for that, I'd be keen to see the numbers and see how it might look in practice.
100%.
So there is key themes in here. So a lot of the goals in here, we've left it specifically with a lot of this will be considered for LTP, and we'll bring it back to the table for those LTP discussions. So that was definitely one of them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Ayling.
I've got lots of questions, but I'll start with one. Do you see the event centre as a community hub primarily, or an events business?
I think the original purpose of the event centre was that it was a community hub, and I think we've still got the capacity and we still are doing that, but I think we also need to grow the events business.
So when the event centre was opened 2011, what was the understanding of how it would be run and funded at that point?
So you might be better to answer that one than me. But in 2011, they had only employed one staff member. The intention was that we provide the facility and people come in and
Use it.
use it. Over the years, they've identified that the people can't use it or won't use it because they don't know how to work the PA systems. They don't know how to work the lighting. They want to come in and just buy the package. They just want to have everything done for them, and they come in, they have their event, and then they go again. So I think that's where the original scope versus where we are now has changed quite significantly.
Because from reading through this, I feel like we're in this kind of awkward middle ground of 1 foot in each camp, from it being a community hub and on the verge of being a exciting business venture as well. And I'm just wondering at what point, or if there's been discussions around making a change from it being this, because obviously we've got the staff now, we've got this investment in it being more than just you can lease this room and put on your event we've got the whole package. And I just wonder if there needs to be more of a divide from council with it being a standalone business that we then, contribute towards in some extent. But I just feel like there's this, like you've got this baby and now it's grown to be something a bit bigger. And I just wonder if there's been conversations around how we make this into a viable business in its own right now, because it is an exciting facility and it has the capacity for so much more. I wonder if actually having council being the money bank is going to hold it back long term, and how it could grow itself.
Are you talking along the lines of what they've done with Hut City? So the council built their event centre and then it's now being managed separately.
I just wonder if there's other examples that we could look at, like Hut City, of how we can devolve from what we are now.
A useful conversation coming up here. I'll just backfill some of the stuff that may not be a bit, well, I didn't see it in here because it is the history, and probably a useful time to bring back some old people just to and drag up some old documents. But when this was first put together, the proposal, we were Carterton was dealing, and bear in mind, it was a 12-year debate. And it virtually went to the ramparts with fixed bayonets, the community rising up against the final proposal, which was to build it. A petition of 2,500 people out of a 4,000 ratepayer base saying, don't build it. And we can't pay the money back. We certainly can't sustain it. But of course, people were overlooking the town hall, Limelight Theatre, the other facilities that were the library that had to be strengthened, had to be restored. You couldn't, it's a heritage building, the oldest working library in New Zealand. There were factors that said you got to keep the library and you got to replace the hall. And Limelight had investment. The Scout Den, we didn't own. And that was a deal. And if I recall correctly, a memorandum of understanding with the Scouts, the courthouse next door was meant to be part of the original, it was part of the original design. It got taken off because of the public backlash on how much money was being spent. And then a second proposal was put up to bring it back in with a further extension to cater for more offices, more storage space, and a whole bunch of other things, and even a cafe. That vote was lost at the council table, and we ended up where we ended up here. But people saw it as a community hub to service the community, in today's terms, the well-being of the community. The library had to function. So the library was always going to be seen as a loss leader. The children's library had yet to be developed and was part of it. Plunkett was brought in on a peppercorn rent because people wanted them in here. The Scout Den, a deal was done where we got the Scout Den, but we had to restore it, renovate it, upgrade it, bring it part into the complex, but on the understanding that they would forever and a day have use of it. And St. John's, who were in here next door, were encouraged to move into the Scout Den again under the same terms and conditions. And I think Pippins, Cubs, Guides, everybody, all those youth groups were all part of that. They owned it. We took possession, built it into here under an agreement. And I don't know where that agreement currently sits or whether we're still complying with it or not. I guess the questions you're asking are really valid questions, is where are we today? and what are the policies, settings that govern how management are able to operate, whether it's going to be a profit venture or.
Could we maybe have a workshop on this? I think that would be really useful. Like for the
Brenda's
future
just
of,
said, yeah, it all applies. There's no, did you not? But
So all of the MOUs and everything that was set in place, they were set in place for a 30-year period, so they're still currently in
still
place.
current.
It's
So,
kind of discussing things. If you, back when I joined council, just prior to that, there was a lot of volunteers working at the front of the event centre. And as things developed and ticket sales began to occur online, it became quite obvious that the volunteers weren't capable of running that side of things, and the decision was made to then start having our own staff
so the
running those.
Yeah, the information centre, which also was like a Carterton souvenir shop and craft shop, and they sold all sorts of things. They were heavily involved in fundraising for this event centre. And the deal was they would have the place front and centre to do their thing. They were subsequently moved on. I know that it broke a few hearts and caused a high degree of controversy. But that event information centre has essentially evaporated, and we have what we have now, which is done here with permanent staff, and that's been an evolutionary change along the way. I guess it's understanding where we are today, what our ongoing legal obligations are, which is front of my mind.
I guess too, with the information centre and the finding it with eyesights, everything's online now anyway, and most people have got a smartphone, they want to find something that's.
Yeah.
And a lot of, like we had a lady come in the other day looking for the AA maps of the North Island, and AA have stopped producing them. So we're getting less and less with the information for the information centre and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just things. It's evolved.
And if I may, I think that's precisely what you would expect of something that has got 10 years worth of knowledge and understanding and history of running events. You would evolve. You would expect it to, as Glenda has said, or potentially Councillor Ayling has suggested, you would expect. So what is the future for the event centre? Because the successes that we have had in the past have meant, we now have full-time lighting technicians and bar staff who are able to sell alcohol on site and manage large events like Stan Walker and the shows that are coming through. So what is the future for our event centre? Because it has been a great community, a wonderful community asset.
And that's and Dale's already raised it. That's my difficulty with, I think it's fantastic having a strategic plan as such. But where, as Dale's mentioned, where's the business case and where's a dollar value of what that might potentially be with options of, you've mentioned here about extending the event centre. Just all those different things, I think we need to. Robin's mentioned a workshop or
happy to we could blue sky some ideas on what our future might look like. I think what the team have done here is assume tomorrow was a lot like today. And so we built a strategy for that, and perhaps the conversation that we need to have around LTP is what would blue sky look like?
Yeah, well, I think with anything, to increase efficiency, you either reduce cost or increase the income. And reducing costs, we know, is if you're serious about servicing and providing a community facility, the costs are the costs. So any opportunity that makes commercial sense to increase the income is a worthy conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we have to accept that there are parts of this facility. We use the term event centre as though it's one entity, and I know full well that the library's the library.
Yeah, and Plunkett's Plunket.
And Plunkett's Plunket, and the Rangatahi area is for them. They have specific social functions, and they are boss leaders, and so how do you, if we're talking about the event centre making money to offset other activities or cover its own costs and that, which part are we actually talking about? Are we just talking about the auditorium, or are we talking about here? We're talking about meeting room there? Because the way they're used for one event, you can use the whole lot.
Yeah.
I know when well, I know from different shows, over Fashion Awards,
Whole place.
the whole venue was used, but how do you break your cost centres out to
Well, that's one of
identify?
the challenges that we've constantly got with the event centre.
So I think maybe like having that workshop and having these, whiteboard, blue sky. Let's have a great, because it'll give all of the elected members a better understanding of all the different uses. And I know before you moved here, I used to run the Over Fashion Awards, which was one of the first events in the event centre, and we brought in our sound and lighting techs, one of whom is now a staff member. And so we brought everything in.
Yeah.
And the staff were great, but it was kind of going, oh God, I wish we had this, wish we had that. And now as the years have progressed, more equipment has been bought in, and it wasn't just us asking for it, it was a huge demand from all the other users as well. So I think having a workshop where we can actually thrash out what does the future look like, and what are the options to increase revenue, whilst being able to support all the community activities. I think that'd be really, really worthwhile.
Because when you start thinking of that blue skies and where are we today, what has it evolved? What was it then? What are the constraints that we have these contracts that are still alive? What are we beholden to? I won't say constrained. What are we currently legally beholden to? How does that change in the future? And what opportunities that can open out or otherwise? If we're talking about, does this become the Wairarapa Event Centre, and with an expansion and extension by Masterton making a contribution, what would that look like if this was to be the Wairarapa Event Centre? If we had a strategy to grow it to something bigger and stop Masterton having to spend $70 million, I mean.
Previous council voted against it being called the Wairarapa Event.
No, but if we had $15 million expansion, we might have a different view. But I think that whole blue sky look at it, and I looked at the vision and I went, yeah, to be the vibrant heart of arts and culture and creativity in the Wairarapa, may have suited us today or yesterday, but to be the Wairarapa's premier venue for conferences, performing arts, social, civic and educational things that's putting you up there as a venue, a Wellington venue. I don't know, but that's a conversation that might crystallise in front of us after some.
And I think it would be good to have that conversation in the lead up to the long-term plan, so we have an open place where we can sort of discuss all these blue sky ideas, because I think it is, I don't want to be seen as negative. I think it's a great facility, and I think we could do more. And I wonder if we could help the event centre become more by not funding it 60% through rates. I just wonder if that's actually going to be a handbrake on the event centre blooming in time. I know things don't happen overnight, but yeah, I think more of a business case will help it function like a business. I think the vision and the purpose to enrich the lives of everyone who come here, it doesn't have many dollar signs sort of connected to that. I don't feel like it has a punch or a goal that is going to drive economic growth. I think it's a feel-good thing, and I think we're stepping away from it just being a hub for the community into more of a world-class facility, and I just wonder if that will suit us in the next so many years, is my only thought.
Because if the venue was to become a premier venue, if the vision was to become premier venue for blah blah blah, you'd have to start talking car parking, and you'd have to start talking about capital. You'd have to start talking about capex, and you'd have to start talking about long-term planning to achieve that strategic vision. And that's a leap beyond. And scaring myself now because it's any more money. Maybe a CCO. I don't know. Why, or maybe not, because you can't, because on a day-to-day basis, I don't know.
we can look.
Would a
Yeah.
CCO fit? I don't know.
I'm just sure other councils who have big facilities like this are in similar conversations going, how do we make this work as a business and how can, we best serve the community? And I think if we just looked outside of the Wairarapa to the hut or whatever to see what they're doing, we could have some exciting things here.
They did come here and use.
Councillor Newman.
No.
It was a good report and I'm excited for the strategy moving forward. I think it's a tricky place that you're in at the moment, where it could be a community hub, but it also needs to be a business case. And I think it'd be interesting to see, your budget for the year and if you're going to hit that and what you're projecting for the next 5 years. Because it is covered a lot by rates at the moment, which I can also see that benefit to the community. And it would be cool if you could report back on that, like somehow put a value on the organisations who use the spaces for free or the support you can give. It's hard when you can't quantify that, but maybe there's a way you can quantify it to help with the whole business case.
So one of the things that we're looking at with the community development team is working on an in-kind grant. And that will work nicely through our Smarty Grants process. So organisations, community groups can come in and apply for in-kind support. So we can start to put a dollar figure on what it's costing council, but for the community group, it's just the use of the auditorium for the day. So that'll be a good way for us to be able to start tracking that level of support. Yeah.
So I think you'll find in council minutes going way back, that's what we talked about. And we cut back that year. For a period of time, we cut back community grants because I think we were tight. We were paying our debt on this place. But the quid pro quo was we gave those particular communities, groups, free use of the rooms for their meetings and that sort of thing. And it was a case of, well, we're not going to give you $1,000 towards your renting a room down the road. We're going to give you a room here.
And that makes sense, and it can do both. There's not events all the time.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a tricky tightrope at the moment, but it's exciting.
It is exciting.
It's a great raise something slightly controversial, and I seem to remember we talked about this in the original talk about the plan came before the council. Name of the event centre? You haven't addressed that in your strategic plan.
We're hoping to pick that conversation up through long-term plan. So there is a talk about a rebranding in here, and I think the name conversation would need to come up if we're going to have a workshop, we'll come up through that workshop around what that looks like. And potentially it's something that we look at for long-term plan and maybe consult on for a long-term plan. I think it comes back to, it's that same conversation that we were just talking about, if there's amalgamation going ahead or if one of the other two councils wanted to contribute to or support this, it lifts us up from being Carterton to, it doesn't have to be Wairarapa, but something a little bit more holistic across the board.
Yeah. Councillor Cretney.
Thanks, His Worship. Glenda, just on the ticket sales, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to speak on it or not, but is it a negotiation between each promoter as to what percentage of a ticket sale council receives?
It works either on a straight hire. So we've got the two options. We've got straight hire or we've got joint venture. If it's a straight hire, they just pay us the use of the auditorium and they do everything in there. Or if it's a joint venture, I think we get, off the top of my head, maybe 15% of the ticket sales.
So Councillor Cretney's question is that negotiated each time, or
No,
is that?
so it's a standard
we've got a
policy within
standard?
our joint venture agreement.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking how, along lines of what Lou's asking, is how do we increase that income and how do we, and is it just, you've mentioned in the strategy, the 5 to 7% increase in fees for using the facility. Is that our best option? is just to keep increasing the fees and to try and.
So it.
The best option is maximise utilisation. Right, the best way of having the event centre pay its way is bums on seats and every night. So that might come back to programming. So at the moment we are a venue of choice, but we aren't out there buying in programs to
Fill in the gaps.
fill in the gaps, exactly. And those gaps tend, and we end up with questions about, well, there's nowhere to stay, and hence the conversation about that I try and have with Masterton about complementing the hotels that are in Masterton with the event centre that's in Carterton. And but yeah, if our best way forward would be to maximise our utilisation of this facility.
Well, that's a whole conversation and a workshop around whether we've got the appetite to speculate, to accumulate, or whether we're a driver or a passenger, all of that.
No,
Was there anything else?
No, that was good.
Can part of that process, we're going to go to a workshop, include just more of a slightly more transparency around what are the insurance costs and electricity and so forth for the event centre. So you've got here corporate services overheads and communication service overheads amounting to over 500,000, and you've got overheads including insurance costs, electricity, other staff costs. Is it possible that we can get a better understanding of that? Just a bit more of a breakdown.
We can. So some of the overheads are split based on a percentage allocation. So things like electricity, for some of it will go to the library, some of it will go here in the hub. So we can have a look at what it is in total. Same with insurance costs. So the insurance for the total centre and how that's allocated. Staff costs, so some are direct wages. So for like event centre staff who are specifically employed for the event centre. Some of the other costs are things like, say, Glenda's time or accounts payable, payroll. Those are kind of the staff costs that are allocated out to all the activities. But we can do some more work around what some of those things, and especially some of the clearer ones like electricity and insurance. Those are some of the bigger, easier ones to unpick. We can do some more work around that. Yeah.
I just see it as being easier to be able to tell a story. That's all.
If I may,
Yes, go. Sorry.
one of the electricity, running the event centre, heating the auditorium is a fairly significant cost. Councillors will recall we received some Better Off grant funding from the government. And one of the projects that we are proceeding with that Better Off grant funding is solar panels, particularly for this facility to reduce our electricity cost. Now, despite the roof of the auditorium being lovely and flat, but we don't think that that's the right place for it because it's a bitumen roof, and the last thing we want to do is have a whole lot of holes in a bitumen roof. So it will predominantly be in the structure here around the Rangatahi hub and library, but we are planning on putting solar panels on here in order to help reduce the cost of heating and cooling.
So, continue from here.
We have an action on a workshop, around some blue sky thinking that we could do and potentially bring into long-term plan consultation.
So can we do the resolution 1 and 3, or do we want to adopt? Do we want to go to resolution 2 or leave that for the blue sky for the workshop, or?
Well, I think as it stands, this is the plan with the budgets that we have currently have. And so it's important that we stick with the budgets that council has approved. So we prefer if you would adopt the current strategy. And then when we change that strategy with blue sky thinking, that will go through a change process in the LTP.
Everyone good?
Yep.
Okay, so can I have someone move all three as one hit, please? Thank you, Councillor Cherry-Campbell, seconded by Councillor Newman. All in favour?
Right.
Yes, motion's carried. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I like the thing.
Oh, so Ashley did a fantastic job pulling the strategy together. So that was our internal staff that pulled the strategy together. Very good.
Document was not produced by AI.
How can you tell?
Right, 7. How are we going for time? 2:57.
1.7, so the deliberations of freedom camping, the revocation of the reserve status of Belvedere Hall and the disposal of 29 Holloway Street. So we've been going through the process of consulting with the community. We've done the hearings which took place on the 21st of August, 22nd of August, sorry. 3 people came and spoke to the submissions, and the hearings committee went through and did their deliberations. Do you want to speak to those, Robin, as chair of hearings committee, or?
I think you've got everything in the report.
Yeah.
Thank you, good report. Yeah, there's anything more?
Does anyone have questions over? Yes, here we go. Councillor Cretney.
Thank you, His Worship. I've got a couple of questions. Just within the report, and Madam might be able to answer. Local iwi were approached for comments on the sale of 58, well, they've provided comments on the sale of 583. Did they provide any comments on 29 Holloway Street? Just there's nothing mentioned in the report, so I was just curious as to.
No.
I've not been contacted. I'm imagining that it went to the iwi reps of the PSG, which would probably be Ra if somebody's consulted.
No comment. Okay.
No.
And my second question is just around the prohibited areas for the freedom camping that are specified. I'm just curious, wondering if Bird Park should be included in that. And also there's a park on the edge of Morden Road.
I think there's no access to that park but you can't get on into that park with vehicles on.
Which one?
In Morton Road.
Oh, that little one.
Is it fenced off?
Does that not come down under the reserves though, like Carrington Park? So that's.
Yeah, it would come through
It would come through under that.
because we do specify in the freedom camping bylaw that the reserves around the CBD, around Carterton are excluded.
Yeah.
So that would include Morton Road.
Morton Road and Bird.
So they don't need to be specifically named.
No.
The reason Memorial Square is because of the parking around it. So it's like public parking anyway, so that's why that was specifically noted outside of. Didn't fall under, it was like obviously in the square itself, but it was those parkings.
Yeah, people hanging their undies out the window. Any other questions? Oh, yes, councillor.
My one question I had was, do we have any indication or expectation of the price we might generate from the sale of 29 Holloway Street?
No.
No ballpark?
No, we had I don't think we've even had a valuation.
It has had a valuation a few years ago at around 600,000. But I think we would be guided by real estate agents as to what that would look like.
Others? Only got one question. It's no, I can't.
Sorry, my only concern is in relation to the land adjacent to the Cherry-Campbell River, which currently has a spot for freedom camping just down from Hurunui-o-Rangi Marae. This is a significant area of historical significance to Hurunui-o-Rangi Marae. This bylaw will then prevent mana whenua camping at the river, which they've done since the inception of time down by the Cherry-Campbell Bridge. However, the little spot is becoming increasingly used for the dumping of metal, turning bay. The trees stop us getting in there. All I'm saying is that this is now going to apply to that area, and for mana whenua, that would be a significant concern that you have a 3-night maximum stay.
This one here.
Yes,
So the green area,
yes.
that's prohibited.
So what does that mean?
So you can camp in this green
And
area.
it doesn't, so the bylaw is not going to apply to that space?
So
Sorry,
no,
thank you.
that's right. So the red areas is where we're prohibited. Is that?
That's a good
Yes.
Okay.
It's much the same.
It's much the same. So this is the
That's the
Gladstone.
one.
And this one here is we've got toilet facilities here.
Yeah.
So there's still camping spaces there. You can still camp there in that green area.
Yeah.
The reason the red was blocked off this side, that's not our land. And that is not a very nice space to be. But this green area that we've got here is still sitting with the toilet facilities and everything.
That was in the
Still camp there.
existing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that
hasn't
doesn't
changed,
come
hasn't
into the
changed.
thing. Thank
That
you.
hasn't changed,
That's all.
yeah.
Thank you.
The council may grant consent to a person to breed and camp in a prohibited area or a restricted area.
All right,
There is council discretion to,
thank you.
grant consent on the basis of.
Yeah, that's, thank you.
Only one. I'm thinking. That one's from the page 233, second bullet point. The submitter who's raised that very interesting question. Do we not have any covenants on Holloway Street to protect the
Indian
character?
Street. Not that I'm aware of.
No. So we could give the landlord over there, build anything he likes that doesn't necessarily fit with us. How do we?
Falls under the district plan, town centre.
We are talking about that area. It is covered by a character area
Good.
at the moment, so,
Yeah.
any redevelopment of that site will require a resource consent or any alterations. With the upcoming district plan, we have just, as I alluded to in later on in the CE's report, we've been developing some guidelines for the styles of buildings that are appropriate within our commercial towns areas where verandas, and under glass, et cetera, is all considered.
So the statement, but this can't be enforced, is not correct? Or we're moving towards
We're
that.
talking about being a swift development as
Ident-
opposed to it being an, so that particular.
Identify need to keep the ambience of the street with any changes and that there should be swift development, but this can't be, the swift development can't be enforced.
That's what they were.
Not the
referring
change.
to,
I was thinking of the ambient, I was reading the ambience in there. But we do have that, because I thought we had those conversations a long time ago about the character nature. All right. So that's taken care of. Solidly. Yep, good. That's what I want. That's good for me. Anyone else? No one else? Any questions? Okay, so let's go straight to then, if we can. Recommendations. For the record, should we do them all separately? I think we should, we should, shouldn't we? Okay, so let's, looking for someone to move that we receive the report and second it, please. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Cherry-Campbell, all in favour? Aye. Against? Motion's carried. Agrees to proceed with the removal of the reserve status and sale of 583 Belvedere Road, known as Belvedere Hall. Councillor Delamere and seconded by Councillor Ayling. Sorry, Della.
Yeah, he had a history, didn't he?
Dallas Stallion, Delamere.
You one, Brian?
Doriki.
Into immigration,
Yeah.
here, Brian.
I dropped Lions meeting tonight. Delamere.
Yeah, Councillor Della and seconded by Councillor Ayling. All in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion's carried. Agrees to proceed with the disposal of 29 Holloway Street, Carterton. Someone to move, please. Councillor Cherry-Campbell, seconded by Councillor Gallen. All in favour? Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Adopts the updated freedom camping bylaw. Someone to move, please. Councillor Laurence and seconded by Councillor Cretney. All in favour? Aye. Against? Motion is carried.
Awesome. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you very much. Amanda, nice work, team.
You might have found your project budget for programming.
Possibly.
7.8, budget carry forwards. stock standard.
Kia ora.
Got up. There you go.
So this report is just bringing to you the budgets that we would like to carry forward into the current financial year. So mostly CapEx, capital projects from last year that either weren't completed or weren't started, but that we still intend to do in the current year. I'll take the report as read. Happy to take questions.
Are there any questions of clarification or understanding? Councillor Ayling.
Just one question of sort of clarification, I guess. With budgets that are carried forward, is there any scope for those budgets to be moved to different projects, or is it has to be for the listed item?
It's generally for the listed item. There's a little bit of flexibility if it's the same activity being funded by the same way.
Yeah.
So there is one in there around the investigating the security and sustainability of water supply. So that one in particular, that's bringing forward the project. We've mostly finished that work, but there's similar or work in that activity that we would like to use that budget for. But we don't bring it forward and just use it for anything.
So it's got to relate to water supply.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Any other questions? Any final comments? All right, moving into the recommendations. That we take, I will take them as one, receive the report and approve the carry forward. Someone to move, please. Councillor Della and seconded by Councillor Gallen. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Motion's carried. Thank you, Kelly. CE's report, Jeff.
Look, I will take the report as read. A couple of things that have occurred since writing the report worth noting. There has been legislation passed in the last days of government. And in this case, it's something that I'm very grateful for. The legislation has made changes to local government electoral legislation bill, which some of you may recall when we were in a COVID environment and everyone was online. They passed standing orders to enable us to hold a meeting online with a quorum that was online. And following the COVID restrictions and legislation ceasing to be enacted or be enforced, we needed to have our quorum actually physically attend the meeting in order to achieve a quorum. So legislation has since been passed that allows us to hold our meetings online and the quorum can count those members who are online. We will need to update our standing orders to do that, but I am very pleased with that, which means that we can hold online meetings. So that's really good. The other thing I'd like to highlight is we mentioned in one of the in the report, we are undertaking a representation review. That representation review will hold a workshop with mana whenua later this month, and we'll look at the mana whenua views on how our representation should be. We don't propose to then continue to consult with the wider public. We're consulting with mana whenua on their views on the representation review, and that will come straight back to council without a public consultation process. So I just wanted to highlight those two things and happy to take questions.
Okay. Questions? Councillor Della.
Probably just one quick one with you. The Carterton Christmas Parade, Carterton Rotary have asked for support from the council to assist with the closure of State Highway 2. Is that manpower or money or?
I expect that's the, Johanna says a lovely word for it.
TMP.
It's a TMP. And there are, yes, so we will need to both get the TMP through and also close the road on the day. So that's the barricades up and then barricades down at the end of the day, and making sure that those, particularly on the state highway, they are manned.
Rotary actually man the road closures on the day.
They're very casual in Christmas, won't it?
Awesome day.
Any other questions? Councillor Ayling.
I just had a comment that I was on the grants committee, and just to say that the Smarty grants process was really easy and it worked really well for us. I think straightforward, and we didn't, waste a whole tree in the process. So it was all good being online, eh, Dale?
And Dale even used it.
I even used it. There you go. There you go. Saved a couple of trees.
Must have been easy.
It was.
Smarty grants was also used for those of you who, I'm glad it was useful, but the team at the event centre set up Smarty grants to operate the Mayoral Relief Fund for Cyclone Gabrielle. So we operated that system for the whole of the Wairarapa. So.
Questions?
Simple.
Oh, sorry, just one comment on the grants. I was complimented on Sunday at the Festival Day for approving grants to an organisation that I hadn't had any correspondence over. So I know I'm not on the grants committee, but next year could it be possible that when the people are advised or the letters are sent out to the emails, that the councillors get advised as well?
Oh, that's one.
Yes, and can I ask, Glenda, I think I know the answer, but instead of putting my foot on it, I'll let Glenda answer.
So what we like to do is we like to send out and give the opportunity for the people to receive their grants, receive their letters, their emails, before we put that out in a public forum or anything anywhere further. So we sent those out on Friday last week, and we'll be putting out the agenda, the minutes, and the list of all the grant recipients on Friday this week. We like to give them that opportunity to have that time to read those letters before it goes to the forum and comes back to us. So it's,
I have a problem with that, and that for councillors to be embarrassed by people over information they don't have is embarrassing. It's not a good position for councillors to be in. So if we can't trust our councillors to keep information confidential, we need to say that or change. And I want my councillors to be fully appraised of who's got grants, because it's not necessarily the ones who have got it, it's the ones who haven't got it or have expectations at the end earlier. So I think if we could have a look at that policy, it might be helpful.
Take that feedback.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, that's all. But carrying on with the report.
I've got a few questions, Jeff. Some of them are outside of your report, that just bringing things to the table that have been asked by the community. One of them's around the street berms and the mowing through winter, the middle of winter, week on, when there's no grass growing and the berms have turned to dust pretty much, but they're still getting mowed, and that's occurring in the heat of summer as well. And there's just a question around the program of the mowing, and can there be a lessening or lowering of the frequency that they're mowed, because mowing them every week through winter is just, when the grass isn't growing, just doesn't seem.
Okay, I was not. I'm more than happy to reconsider the frequency. I'm fairly certain the team don't mow for no reason. They've got quite a lot of work to do, and usually they have more work than they have hours in the day. So I'm more than happy to take the feedback that if they don't believe the berms need to be mowed, particularly in town, then they won't. Yeah.
Thank you.
Plenty to do.
I was curious about the flow of the inflow at the moment of the wastewater treatment plant. You mentioned it's
Yeah, so the inflow is continuing. I can't recall what the numbers are off the top of my head. The challenge for us at the moment is the low river levels. Means Greater Wellington have not yet established their irrigation scheme on the 24 hectares of Dalefield site. So what we have done is acquire some, I think they're referred to as pay lines or the pods, in order to expand our irrigation from the inflows to make sure that we're irrigating across the entire 40 hectares that we do have on Dalefield site. We're using the pivot irrigator and we're adding K lines in order to try and irrigate there. Our challenge has been with the low flow, we're unable to, discharge into the Mangatatere.
So that was my next question is, have we been able to use the pivot irrigator yet?
I think the pivot, I need to double check the resource consent. I think the pivot irrigator is limited to a period of time. So I think it's like the summer period. I will need to double check. I think we are allowed to use it now, now that we're in spring. But I believe it was a period of, whilst we were in winter, it wasn't able to be used.
Yeah, I was just meaning we've had some good weather, so I'm just
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we've upgraded the nozzles on the pivot irrigator to increase the flow as well.
Is there any restrictions around wind speed at which limit our use?
Yes, there are.
Yeah, that's right. I thought there were.
Next question. Just around the roading contractor, do we look to commission an independent auditor or assessor or anything before we look at potentially extending their contract, just to evaluate the work that they've been completing over the previous years?
So the contract is, it's a great question. Contract is 5+3, I think. So this is the +3. We would normally do a full assessment when we reach the end of the term and we're going to market for that contract. At this stage, talking with Johannes, we are really happy with the performance of the contractor for their delivery in Carterton network. I can't say the same thing is true of South Wairarapa, that's their call, but they seem to be less happy with the performance of the contractor. South Wairarapa do have approximately 650 kilometres worth of roads and we have approximately 350 kilometres. So we are a smaller area and they're able to get around our area much better than they can in South Wairarapa. So at this stage, we don't see any reason to do a full assessment. It's just the rollover of the contract or the extension.
Thank you. Next question. I'm wondering if council can look into installing signage or whether there can be some education to sports clubs and users of our parks and so forth, because there's been a number of complaints from ratepayers with people vaping and smoking in our parks, especially around Howbooth during sports days and so forth.
We've recently adopted a smoke and vaping policy, so I think that's certainly something that we can look at.
Thank you.
Now that that's been adopted.
And the last one was just around trees overhanging on roads, and specific. This person I've suggested to them that they fill in a form, but they've said about Somerset Road, and there's considerable trees overhanging the road, and on the corner of Dorset and Somerset Road, there's a tree that restricts the view, and it's also where students get on and off the bus, and they're just asking if council can please have a look at that.
Right, we'll take an action on that one.
Thank you. That's it.
Anyone else? Councillor Laurence.
It's just something that struck me, and it's relatively frivolous in the scheme of things, but under animal control, we said there are 162 unregistered dogs. I mean, how do we know that?
We estimate there is Sure.
And he knows their names.
Yeah. The other ones that we have that were
Previously.
previous year.
Yeah.
And haven't come back with registration, either because the dog's just sees, they've moved out the district. So what we do is, we know, if you've moved away, if they haven't got mail, that second contact, it goes on National Dog Database, we can work out who has or who hasn't. So there's probably a few more out within the wider community that we're not aware of, and we catch them when we find them wandering down the street without a tag or a microchip.
Yeah, I know it's not serious, but just struck me as an interesting piece of arithmetic.
Well, it's essentially how we double check, you know, we take last year's dog registration and, you know, obviously there's, well, it's like any community, there's birth, deaths and marriages. So there will be dogs that pass away and new litters born. So we try and at least keep across roughly how many unregistered dogs we do have. It's difficult. Normally the signal for the owner is when they get next year's dog registration fee, and the dog has passed, they will come in to us and tell us at that point.
Any other questions?
Question around the cycleway.
Go.
Idea for that. So Waka Kotahi indicated there was the possibility to have it included and funded as part of the State Highway Improvement Plan. Now that we're not going ahead with the project, does that mean that's off the table, or will it come back for consultation when we do get to that point in a few years' time?
That's a great question. So Waka Kotahi have not yet determined a timeline to upgrade the state highway. They've indicated that it is approximately 2 years away. When they do that, we fully expect that they will consult with us on what that upgrade involves. At this stage, their upgrades are just mostly about raised pedestrian crossings along the state highway from Featherston through to Marston, but they haven't mentioned that they will definitely include funding for cycleways. They haven't ruled it out.
Okay.
We're negotiating.
Okay.
It is disappointing to have had that project reach a conclusion that meant that we returned funding to the climate change fund and transport choices. And we'll I think there's more work to do on community engagement around our strategy and around our routes before we try that again.
Yeah. And maybe if we could pull out that 2016 walking cycling strategy, and
Was that adopted by the council?
that's the first question.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Still
Yes,
not.
yes.
I'm sorry.
It was approved just before Christmas. Yes.
Okay. So if it was, I would just review its place and status, and
If it was adopted, then it would be on our website showing it's adopted. So we'll be able to use this to Google and find out if it has been adopted or not.
Can I just,
no.
the senior stuff.
It may have been brought to the table, but it may not be adopted as a strategy. So we need to check that.
Okay.
So let's note that. Are there any other questions? Because
Comments?
I've got comments.
your comments, go for the end. Look, no, before we get to that, because I think I know where we're going. Could you just give us because we had a bit of an issue with water valves last week, which all the staff have come to and sorted out, and it was quite a serious one. You want to give us because it happened after the report was produced, our failure, loss of water to
Up, and you may well have me at a disadvantage.
okay.
I believe Johannes was across
Yeah.
that one,
And he
and
moved pretty well. Comms were heavily engaged. Your water services team was heavily engaged. And what stood potentially to, what stood potentially to be a big issue evaporated.
So yeah, it was some routine valve testing, and unfortunately one of the valves malfunctioned, which I guess is part of the testing process. The team jumped on board pretty quickly to get all hands on deck to repair that, so that basically they had to cut off water to one street, they had to shut off water to a few other streets to get it fixed. The team were out there digging all day in the heat and working as quickly as they could. Johannes and Rachel, so the managers were on deck handing out letters to the residents to make sure that everybody was aware of it, as they thought it may go into the evening. But thankfully at 5:30, the water was restored to all the streets. So it was a really good outcome and a good team effort.
And fortunately, you were able to get replacement parts as quickly as you were able to do it, which was pretty astounding. I have to say the speed and the efficiency with which what could have been a big story in the newspaper could have been a major issue for particularly Carter Court and others who absolutely depended on vast amounts of water was superbly done. And the fact that it never broke anywhere else is testament to the team, Jeff.
Thank you.
And I mean right across the board, because all of the different elements of the council swing into gear there, it worked really, really, really swiftly. I guess what it does, it reinforces in my mind, it leaves the question in my mind, how quickly would a water services entity have responded, given that I've seen geysers in Wellington gushing for days on end? Yeah, it's
This is exactly why I say having our own team.
Yeah.
So then on board, they can do it straight away. Don't have to put a little paper. Do it. In fact, it's probably going to be sitting in the shed out here. You don't have to get it from Auckland.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. No, it wasn't pretty. It was very impressive. So congratulations to the team. That's what I've got. I'm looking forward to the United Nations Days of the Older People. Marama, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I obviously have seen I've been a bit distracted over unfolding situation that I'm going to excuse myself from the council with. Sorry that my phone has interrupted everybody. I've been trying to have an argument online, but
Not like you.
I'll update you, not like needle, I'll update you next time.
Congratulations on your appearance on that documentary. I've had nothing but huge reports.
Very good documentary, actually, by the way, everyone. And we should convince the Wairarapa theatres to run it. They haven't yet jumped on as River of Freedom doco.
Actually, right. So, no other questions. It's a good comprehensive report, and
Get some other things you mentioned.
Sorry.
Yeah, would you like?
Yes, comments. Yeah.
The cycleway. First of all, I want to say thank you to the team because they worked so hard behind the scenes on an ever-changing beast, and we're so good and responsive and constantly changing to try and keep up with what was happening. I'm still really disappointed in the outcome of it and some of the ways that it's been reported that there wasn't the public consensus, but even in the engagement we had 26 people for it, only 11 against it. You're never going to get full public consensus on anything. So I don't think that is a fair justification for why it didn't happen. I also think we can say we support cycleways, which is awesome, but I think we really need to look at the safe and elegant cycleways for people to get to schools and to work. I don't think the tourist cycleways and going out to Clearville Hockey Stadium, which is awesome still, but really I think what we need is the mode shift happening on the daily here in Carterton. I think it's probably easier to sell these tourist routes, but I think it's really important that we make sure we keep thinking about the people who need it on the day-to-day basis. And I thought it's been interesting since it came up publicly, just what people have been saying online about it, that it would have been a game changer for them, and they're really, really disappointed that it hasn't happened. The fact that even with the money from the government at a super low cost to ratepayers, we couldn't get over the line. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and just to follow on from Councillor Newman, I'm disappointed the project has stopped. I chose, like Lou and Steve, chose to be one of the 3 council champions for the project, and I guess because as a dad of a youngster, I wanted to help deliver something meaningful for the children of Carterton. At this point, during the consultation, I met people who said, don't get me wrong, Dale, we love children and we support cycling, but just not near me. And sometimes I think, the people that pressure council to fight on their behalf are often the people who don't want change. who don't, want to keep the status quo. As we just talked before with the event centre, Carterton's got a history of being bold and actually being progressive. And I suppose, I was hopeful that we might have been able to move this forward. I also heard criticism that we were just chasing the Waka Kotahi funding, and my response was, well, what's wrong with trying to leverage off outside money instead of ratepayers? Council hasn't got and never will have $1 million in the bank just sitting idle waiting to kickstart a project like this. And we were offered a full 100% subsidy to make this happen. And I guess, children aren't ratepayers, they can't vote, they don't go on social media, and they're not going to leave anytime soon, but one day they might. And when you talk to youngsters about planning and delivering, they don't want the same old, same old. They don't want the status quo, but they're not the ones that are talking to us and encouraging us to be bold. And I know the route options, that all of them, right from the very start, that we considered were not perfect. None of them had available everything that everybody might want. And this was not just where we landed, but even where we started. But as with every other project council undertakes, things have to evolve to get the desired outcomes. And I guess for me, why I got involved at the start was I've always held this, it's better to start with something than to end with nothing. And I'm disappointed at this point in time that we've ended with nothing, because I felt we started with something that had the potential to get off the ground with no ratepayer money and actually create something that we could have been able to build on going forward. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Newman said. The staff and the project team, including we three, put a huge amount of time and energy in consultation and design and planning and communicating and so forth. So, it's no reflection on our project team that we've landed in this place. This is democracy at work, but I need to say I'm disappointed that we weren't able to maximise the advantage that was available to us.
I would just like to say thank you to my fellow elected members for putting their hands up to champion, and the team as well. I'm gutted. I'm absolutely gutted this hasn't gone ahead. Like you said, it was free, not just because it was free money, but it was free money. It wasn't going to cost our ratepayers. It was going to make a difference to a lot of people. And I get really frustrated with the whole NIMBY mentality. I really, really do. And I think, thank you for reminding us that Carterton District Council has a history of being bold. I think it's important for us to remember that. I see the passion of the team behind it, on the project team and the staff, and the passion from you three when you were engaging with the public. And the feedback I got from the public was, why aren't they doing it? I had 2 people say, I don't want to lose my car park outside my house. I said, do you have a driveway? Oh, yeah. Do you park in your car park? Oh, no. It's that NIMBY stuff. And it was really frustrating. So thank you, you three, and thank you to the team as well. And yeah, gutted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I guess on the other side, what I have found positive, Glenda, is those other options that are more outside in town. And if we can, I'm sitting here looking at 5 town trails, $294,000. And north and south of me, the very people who stand to gain the most from that money aren't engaging. And I can't help but ask myself the question of, well, Glenda, what could we do in those other areas that you've got your circle around with money? But let's see where we go, because I think some of those things that you raised later on were going to have massive buy-in. So let's see where we go with that review. And things aren't ever always off the table. Just sometimes it's timing.
Yeah. I'll just put my 2 cents in. for the sake of balanced argument. I think what Lou said was fair. I don't know if the comms that went out regarding why this has failed was correct. I think that saying that we're not going to get community consensus was part of the reason, but I think fundamentally this was a democracy question and there wasn't support around this table to get it across the line. And that's really what it came down to. So I think it's worth the public knowing. It's not just because there are some disgruntled townsfolk. Us as elected representatives have read reports and have seen the detail, and we didn't have a consensus around this table to get this across the line. And so while it is disappointing that kids won't have, the benefit of these cycleways, that's governance and that's democracy, and we need to have consensus on these things. We need more than 4 people voting for it, so that's why it failed.
Yep, that's fine. I think we should go straight to the recommendations. I'll find the right page. Into the CE's report.
Do you see the name?
Move saying, yep. We're there. Here we are. Someone to move that receive the CE's report, please. Councillor Della, seconded by Councillor Laurence. Oh,
I was just trying to attend my PC.
saw your hand.
You got eye contact.
All in favour? Aye. Aye. Against? Motion's carried. Thank you. And thank you once again to the staff for their diligence. Water Services Reform Update.
I think Johannes may have drafted this paper. I'm happy to speak to the paper. I think it reads for a fair assessment of where we are at today. The question on everyone's mind is, so what happens in 6 weeks' time when the goalposts have moved? And I can't answer that question until we have some clarity from the election. What I am really clear of is and I think I mentioned it earlier today with council, that the Wellington region group may wish to consider what the future looks like together, and they may wish to continue on with a progress of the water services entity in either a council controlled organisation or some other form, because some of the councils have much more pressing issues than I will obviously participate in those conversations and bring them back to council, but there may be a desire to push on regardless for some of the Wellington councils. At this stage, it's a wait and see what the next 6 weeks will bring.
Is what it is. Are there any questions? I think it's a hiatus period. Yeah. I think
See, there's some detail that's starting to be formulated.
yeah. I mean, clearly a lot of work going in there. I'm
also very pleased to say that we have received the full lot of tranche 1 better off funding, so it's good to get in the bank for.
Nice.
Could they take it away?
Yeah. As you said, free money, spend it. Well, it's not free money. We're losing our assets. The only thing I just said, we had this conversation earlier on, but for those who, Dale, Deputy Mayor and I did attend that meeting in Featherston last night. And it just puts a good bunch of muddy water up there in the ether. And the only thing that's clear is what we know today. And what was made absolutely emphatically clear is that one side of the fence sees them changing everything back. But we all know that it's a long way between here and post-coalition negotiations, and anything can happen. So we'll see. In the moment, we keep planning on what we know and we work around what's happening currently. And that's the way it has to be. I think the real touch is making sure that our LTP reflects this. And if it changes, it changes.
One of the key things that Johannes is currently doing today for us is the conversation around the Wairarapa hub. So as our conversations have progressed, there's certain requirements that need to be delivered on the ground. So Wairarapa and Kapiti are looking at developing a hub so that the resources have a place to go. Now that the question is whether that hub is just delivery arm, so essentially those that will do the work, or whether there is a customer arm and a management arm to those hubs as well. But those conversations are progressing. We are absolutely certain there will be a Wairarapa hub. Where that is and what that looks like, we're not quite sure yet, but there needs to be a place for all of the service agents in the Wairarapa to be in. And we have clearly we've got a strong preference. This is to have the hub here in Carterton. There's questions around city care up in Masterton and what we do with Wellington Water and South Wairarapa. The hub will need to have both a place for the depot staff, but also secure storage of material that can be, that is required to repair and maintain the networks. And hence the question as to officers and customer facing. Does the hub need to be a customer facing hub as well?
And the questions will be, will that hub be responsible for capital development? Will that hub just be operations?
So
will it have maintenance, or will it have service delivery?
No, it'll have maintenance and service delivery. The capital plan will be taken from the council's capital plan. So the water services entity proposes to pick up all of our capital plans and for years 1 and 2 and potentially years 3, but definitely years 1 and 2, that will be the capital plan for the water services entity. As you get further out, years 3, 4, 5, etc., the water services entity may wish to have more involvement and change those capital plans. But at this stage, they're going to pick up, it's what they call a lift and shift. They're going to lift up our capital plan and drop it into being years 1 and 2 of the water services.
Yeah, water services entity. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
We agree. Deliver. We just need to fund it. Very good.
Someone move or receive the report. Councillor Cherry-Campbell and seconded by Councillor Newman. Thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Yes, motion carried. Thank you. 711, page 293. Lagoimus.
Oh,
Pop back up for a minute.
Fave.
So a standard Lagoina report. We've had a kind of steady stream over the last several weeks, which is pretty on around election time and everything. So I'll take the report as read, but happy to take questions.
Bumper.
Oh, I'm going to stick my neck out. What the heck? I just find it astounding that anybody would move to a town and live 100 metres away from a town clock. Petition the council to turn the chimes. I mean, I've heard of reverse sensitivity and people buying next to airports and so forth.
I thought you were against NIMBYs.
But that one,
I'm in favour of NIMBY.
that one leaped all over me, and I thought, really? Is that the best use of Lagoima and our staff's time? Anyway.
Well said.
I read that too. I couldn't believe it.
Well,
You can see our response online if you like.
We did have this conversation and during an ELT meeting, and I'm sorry.
I know of some really good
We have like an empathy, but
for them.
Kelly, just on the same page, just under that one, is that relating to Kiwi Rail Working Group?
Yes, yeah.
Yes. It's just, there's no context within it as to what it's to do with.
Yes, yeah, Kiwi Rail.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
what reason? Hot water fluoridate?
So
For not having our water supply fluoridated.
if I can add one more comment, Te Whatu Ora, now have the authority from the Director General of Health to instruct council to fluoridate our water system. We've received 3 letters from the Director General of Health, who has started with larger councils and instructed those larger councils to fluoridate their water system. At this stage, that's taking slightly longer than they had anticipated to complete. So their update to me was we aren't in the first tranche of councils, and at this stage they haven't got a timeline to come back to us, but at some point they may instruct us to fluoridate the water system now. That may fall into the water services entity, but we currently don't have the capital in our plan in order to make that happen, and that may be a conversation that we need to include in the long-term plan.
Yeah. Comments around that. That's another question of democracy, I think. Or how many referendums have there been in Carterton Council? And all emphatically said they don't want fluoride. Those referendums were
We could put it in.
probably a bit dated now, but
In their water tanks?
sorry. That's right. Every farmer, every war.
To the,
Are we going to have to put fluoride into aquifers for people who are drawing off?
It's only reticulated even town supplies, and hence it's now a public health issue. It's not a elected member issue.
I can tell you from my recycling efforts, if you've ever done it, never done it, try it. Cut open your toothpaste tube and wash the plastic and put the plastic in the recycling and tell me what it was like.
I hope you used the residual toothpaste.
Yeah.
Fluoride. I use fluoride toothpaste, and then I didn't realise it was so freaking strong. Anyway, here we go.
We'll put down the 30-year long-term plan.
Yeah, here we go.
Year 29.
Someone move. Receive the report. Councillor Ayling. And someone second, please. Councillor Cretney, all in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion's carried. Straight to, there is no vote excluded. Could I just ask, could we, as we do at the front of the papers, we put the standard karakia? Yeah, it's for me. If we could have the closing karakia in there too.
We don't have a standard closing karakia,
Oh, okay.
which is why there isn't one.
Oh, well, let's come up with one. Maybe our advisors can give us one from the office. Yeah. Councillor Cherry-Campbell, would you please do us the favour of closing our hui with a karakia? Thank you.
Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki, a ihu karaiti, me tu aroha o te atua, me te whiwhi tahitanga, ki te wairoa tapu, aki, aki, aki. Amen.
Ameni, and thank you. Look, thank you to all the staff. And thank you, Robin. Good morning.